So, it was great to hear what comes next after a lean startup. But I think now we actually will take the opposite and we will look what is happening before the pitch. How to prepare and how to win over investors.
So this session is your golden ticket to understanding the investor's mindset, avoiding pitfalls, and setting the stage for a winning investment round. So
this will be a deep dive into lessons from fundraising school. And I think both of the speakers need very little introduction. Both of them are 500 startups alumni. And this discussion will be something I personally have been looking forward to. So let's welcome on the stage Raimonds Kulbergs, CEO and founder of BADideas.fund.
As well as Mr. Ghante, the time-living VC partner, specialist in business development, growth tactics, and go-to-market execution. Welcome to the stage.
So, round of applause.
Nice, we're good to go. Whew, it'll be a nice conversation. First off, I met Suhas when I was at 500 Startups a few years ago in San Francisco. So first question, Suhas, what brings you to Riga? How come you ended up here?
That's a good question. You know, I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I'll tell you a little bit about my startup journey and how I ended up in Riga, in Latvia. So, in DC, after university, I ended up moving to San Francisco as a suit and tie wearing management consultant. And walking around the streets, I saw everybody with shorts and t-shirts my age working on these things called startups. And I said, wow, I got to get out of this suit and tie and get into the startup world. So I ended up joining a company, very, very, very early stage, very scrappy in the health tech space. We went through 500 startups. And then a few years later, it's become a multi-unicorn. So I saw this hyper-growth, this exponential growth, and I was addicted. I couldn't go back to suit and tie wearing consulting work anymore. And so I started my own company very soon after that and went through 500 startups again, which is where we met, I think in 2017. And in that company, we raised money, we went out to market. Unfortunately, we failed in about 18 months to 2 years. We made pretty much every single mistake you can make in an early stage startup we made. But I should take that back. You know, a mistake is not a mistake unless you make it twice. The first time you have to learn from it. It's a lesson. So I like to say I learned the most lessons from those 2 years building that company. And anyway, after that, I just did more and more operations roles and marketing, sales, etc. And one day, a very close friend of mine calls me and says, hey, we got into this thing called Y Combinator. We're doing a home-cooked food startup. So basically, Raimonds, if you make pasta at home, I come to your house, I pick it up, I sell it for 10 euros, and I give you 7 euros. Imagine that on a very large scale. So we went through that program. I ended up sleeping on the couch of the founder's apartment for about 3 or 4 months during YC. And YC is an extremely intense process to go through. And again, after a few short years, that company is now Series B backed, 70 million or so by Andreessen Horowitz. And I was getting a bit too old.
A unicorn.
We'll see.
We'll see.
But basically, I was getting a bit too old to sleep on couches. And I started doing advisory work, consulting work with mostly European consulates from Spain, Switzerland, Denmark, and San Francisco that want to bring companies from those countries to the Valley for funding, for market expansion, etc. And I fell in love with the Spanish culture, and I live in Madrid. And we're working together on many, many different projects, and hence, I'm in Riga.
Nice. So how I was so lucky to have you come join a project we were building, and you were closer geographically, time zone-wise. With BADideas, it was the second year in operations, and we were looking at thousands and hundreds of decks, and we saw a pattern. The decks could be better, the communication that founders did was better, so that investors, as us, as anyone else, could make it easier for them to dissect in seconds, okay, what is that startup about? Give us the gist, give us the essence, and I thought that's a good value to add. So we as a team, we decided we would do a fundraising school, and it was epic. It was such a success. We had 80 teams apply, many from Latvia, but many also from all over rest of Europe. We had 40 investors that we managed to do speed dating with them that had command over 700 million in investable money. And Suhas was leading that program content-wise. He was teaching all of the lessons you were actually and mistakes you were making, as well as on one-on-one coaching startups. So we'll want to deep dive into what kind of things were you seeing there? What kind of lessons did you see you had to give? But also, what did you learn about this region, about the startups here, about the teams?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I know there's many alumni from fundraising school in the audience, so hello and thanks for joining us. I think the biggest takeaway is that after being in Silicon Valley for 8 years and having lived in Europe for about 3 years now, I can tell you with confidence and experience that Silicon Valley is a mindset. It's not a location, right? Sure, there's VCs, there's lots of ecosystem partners, et cetera, in the Valley, but the way we do things, the way we scale, the way we grow, and the culture, I think it's something you can bring to Riga or Tallinn or Madrid or wherever. It's something that's not monopolized by geography, right? So just going and helping so many companies and startups in fundraising school, I think two of the biggest issues, I'll say issue instead of challenge, is that especially companies from the Baltic have a bit of trouble with communicating that they're thinking very big, with a capital B, right? Billions. So many in the school were very early stage. They had just started maybe a few months ago, very little traction. And you need to imagine when you're asking for money from an investor, they'll make 10 investments. If they're really lucky, maybe 1 or 2 will go to unicorn level or very large. If they're extremely lucky, maybe 3, right? The other 7 will go to basically 0. So we need to prove as a founder that you are one of those 3 that'll reach that unicorn status or beyond, right? So even if you are extremely early stage, show in the investor's mind that you are capable of getting to unicorn level and being one of the 3. I think that's sort of a mindset learning, at least I want to bring to the region. And the other one, and I'm curious to get your take on this now that you're back in Riga from 500 startups, is in a fundraising deck, we want to be less modest and more showing off or more bragging, right? Show off your traction early. Show off your amazing team members. It's not a time to be modest. It's a time to really show off and show that you are one of the 3 out of 10 that will be a unicorn in the future. So I'm also curious to get your take. You're quite unique in this regard, having spent time in the Valley, now back in Riga. How has your mindset shifted after being in the Valley and coming back to Europe?
Well, one thing that comes to mind, my deck when I was raising for my first round is shit. I still can't look at it. How embarrassed I am about it. But it took quite some beating into me to actually get it to a decent level, to a good level, and that was what I loved at 500 Startups. Every week we were grilling each other, yeah. And investors were grilling us before we demo day, and both how you tell the story, but more importantly, that the vision that you have in you and all of the questions that an investor has in the right order, you tell it in a really simple, like to a 7-year-old or a 15-year-old, and they understand. But one thing that comes to mind, I landed in the San Francisco airport. I came out of the airport and I felt like I don't belong here. They must have made a mistake. And what am I here doing all of these cool global startups? They're doing really big things. So that I felt a bit of imposter syndrome. And the lesson learned I got after week, just grinding it through, coming in first in, last out of the day, checking out, and it was hard work, but I saw the other teams were not as hardworking. I mean, those that are actually US teams, right. So those that came in from abroad, just as hardworking. And we from the Baltics, we had Estonian team, Latvian team, and I knew the work ethic of Printify co-founders, artists who helped me also to get actually into 500 startups. It's a big grind, and we have that, I think, in this region, the grind. But what we lack is that, brevity and clarity to communicate really bold vision from day one.
That's an excellent segue to what I was just going to say, which is, the best companies don't get funded, right? The best communicated companies get funded. So the importance of communication, of brevity, right, of speaking clearly and succinctly, I think is crucial. I'd rather have a company that basically has a really ugly pitch deck but an amazing story versus a really pretty pitch deck and a terrible story, right? The importance of communication is paramount. Yeah.
Well, maybe let's switch gears. Let's make it more practical. I'm sure the fundraising school, we had, what was it, 6 weeks?
Yep.
6 weeks of intense work with the teams. I'm sure you were sharing all your wisdom and practical like things and suggestions what they should do. So what were those practical things that the audience here can take home?
Well, I think from what I remember, there's maybe about 3 quick fixes that any founder in the room can make, especially if you're in your fundraising journey right now or you will raise later in the year. First off, the most important is to just fix the storyline, right? And what I mean by that is, Raimonds says, I love food, especially I love sandwiches, but do you know my favorite sandwich?
Shit sandwich?
Traction sandwich. So it's a line I've been saying over and over again for many founders I work with. The traction sandwich way of telling a story is basically everybody has the same 10 slides, right? All of you do. But slide 2 or slide 3, show a bit of traction. Show me your GMV, show me your ARR, show me how amazing your CTO is with 2 PhDs, whatever, right? Show me something impressive. Then you have the sandwich, the usual problem, solution, market, the usual stuff that everybody has. At the very end, slide 8, slide 9, show me one more piece of traction, right? Show me GMV, show me partners, whatever you want. But traction up front, traction at the end, sandwich in the middle, right? That will captivate more of the investor's attention. You probably get at least 10, 20 decks a week. Maybe only 1 or 2 are memorable. But at least this will be memorable for the investor. So you can fix that quickly and easily. And it's something I strongly recommend using as a way of talking about your company.
That's very, very, very simple. So just like giving feedback, you do it also through sandwich.
Yeah.
Good feedback, shitty.
Yeah.
Like what you need to improve and good feedback again. Okay.
Exactly. There's 2 other quick things I'll just share because I just want to be as impactful as possible and useful. The other is the importance of a one-liner, especially in conferences like this when you'll meet so many investors in the elevator or just walking on the streets here. If you can talk about your company very clearly in just one line that takes 10 seconds to say, that'll take you way further than a really, really, really pretty pitch deck, right? If you have just an hour to spend, fix your one-liner. Don't make your pitch deck prettier.
Well, easier said than done. One-liner, like, you can surely come up with one line how to describe your business, but what does it's only one line, it's what so many words in it. What kind of words should we use? What elements should be included there? What do you want to capture there?
Well, luckily, there's a framework that I recommend. It's called Startup Mad Libs. You can just Google it. But basically, it's
Startup Mad Libs.
Mad Libs, exactly. And so it's just a way of talking about your company, what it does, who it serves, and the secret sauce, which is the most important part of your one-liner. What makes you special? What makes you stand out? And this is something, I'm personally...
So what you do,
yeah.
What problem it solves, how, the secret sauce?
What you do, what the problem is, to whom you're selling to, and your secret sauce at the very end.
And squeeze it in as few words as possible.
Ideally.
Okay.
It's difficult, I know. So it's a difficult thing, and it's something I'm passionate about. So I ended up taking a weekend and putting together a GPT that specifically helps you craft this one-liner and gives you a rating from 1 to 5 and helps you just make it as good as possible.
Does it work?
It works really well, yeah. We've had many people in the audience use
so where can they get this?
I think on the GPT store and ChatGPT, or you could LinkedIn me and I can share it with you.
Okay, LinkedIn him, ask him for the GPT. I'm sure it will come in handy. Okay, so building on this, startup Mad Libs as a way and framework to tell your one-liner.
Right.
One thing I've noticed about myself, as well as when looking at pitch decks and speaking to founders, is that there is this temptation to speak about your startup as something special, as something squeezing in as many details as possible just to show that your startup is special. But at the first, what I see that actually works best for an investor who has an attention span of a 10-year-old, right? You want to speak in as simple language as possible, dumb it down, and you don't want to stand out at the first one-liner, first 30 seconds that you're speaking. You actually want to just put it in the right shelf for him in his brain. He might have had a conversation with another person, with another founder who's pitching them a B2C software, social media app somewhere, and now you're pitching something else. He's still thinking about that last startup. What you want to do is rinse his palate. Just speak about, in simple terms, what customers you're serving, what problem you're solving, what is that market, what's the secret sauce, that's it.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. That's it.
Okay. I totally subscribe. Okay, so that we've covered 2 practical tips. What's next?
There's one. I promised 3. This is a bit controversial, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to. But in most of the decks I get, I'd say the vast majority, the most useless slide I've seen is the TAM, SAM, SOM. Everybody seems to have it these days, and especially if you have some traction,
So market slide.
Yeah, the market slide. How big the TAM is, it's, I don't know, 5 trillion or something, but nobody really cares about that at the end of the day. As an investor, we care how you're going to get 1% of that 5 trillion TAM, as an example. So my recommendation is get rid of your TAM, your market size slide.
Get rid of it.
Just get rid of, put it in the appendix if you really want, but just have a slide that shows GTM, go-to-market execution, right? How you're going to tackle and do the sales to get that 1% of the TAM through partnerships, through distribution channels, etc. These days, with everybody doing a startup, it's distribution over product, right? I'll take a crappy product that has amazing distribution over the other way around.
So a mediocre, a meh product, but with really good distribution, that's what you think investors will go after.
And just, I mean, there's examples in the market already. I mean, for example, I really prefer Slack, as I know you do too, over Microsoft Teams. But Teams has far better distribution than Slack, right? Because of Microsoft. So the Teams installations has gone exponentially higher than Slack right now, right? So if you look in the market with your own areas, your own industries, you'll see examples like this abound. So I'd really emphasize in your slide decks, show distribution strategy, show GTM execution, more so than how big the market is.
Well, is it just a slide that needs to be fixed, or did you see from the 80 teams you worked with that this is something that they need to go back to the drawing board, do homework on their distribution or the go-to-market strategy, and actually then put it back into the slides?
Yeah, this is not easy. I make it sound like a quick slide you can just fix in 5 minutes, but it's something that requires some deep thought, and I'm going to tie it into something I really want to talk about, which is a lot of people in the room are fundraising just for the sake of fundraising, right? Just because they want to start up, they want to go and get VC money and sort of grow this company. In my personal opinion, my own experience, the only reason a company raises money in the angel, pre-seed, seed round is simply to run growth experiments. You need to have some capital to run Facebook ads, to run Reddit ads.
This is the next goodie, yeah?
Yeah.
Run experiments. What do you mean run experiments?
Basically, when you have a company, you have to figure out how you can make a flywheel effect, how you can get that J-curve, right, the exponential growth every investor wants. And so for every company I've been with, we've run a successful company, we've run experiments on a monthly basis. I'm talking 5, 10 experiments, you know, things like putting coupon codes on car windshields, as an example. Facebook ads is a classic example. Going to marketing events, right?
So experiments specifically trying to figure out how you get customers.
Right. Yeah, figuring out how you grow the company. What you'll find is...
So is it a years-long experiment? Is it we do this today, we do this week?
The earlier you are, I think the shorter time frame you have to run these experiments because you don't have much capital to spend on some of these experiments, right?
I remember we had an experiment spreadsheet template that the 500 Startups team shared with us. It went something like, every line is a new experiment that you run. You basically create a backlog of ideas, and then to decide which of those experiments do you actually start working with, you prioritize them based on, I remember, 3 criteria: how big of an impact you think it will make, how easy or hard it will be to execute on that, and how confident are you that it will actually work. Have you applied that, or that's one of those lessons you...
Yeah, I made a slight modification to that template, and
Oh, yeah?
I have my own that has a pain score, because many of these experiments cause you a lot of pain, either financially or with a lot of your time. You have to go running around parking lots and putting coupon codes on car windshields. These are all real things that I've done.
You've done that?
Yeah, it's worked.
Did it work?
Yeah, we got a fine for littering, but it still worked. But anyway, what I recommend is running these experiments, right? Do as many as you can. And after about 3 or 4 months of experimentation, you'll realize there's only 2 or 3 that work really well for you. And in every company I've been with, those 2 or 3 have been very different. There's no way to figure out which one will work for you without you going out there and trying it, right?
Okay, so running experiments is essential for building a startup. That's what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Okay, but this topic is about fundraising. Do you communicate that to your investors? If you do, then how?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a crucial portion of Q&A with investors. They want to see what you've done so far, especially if you're very early stage, right? They want to know you have this growth mindset of experimentation. And just fast forwarding a little bit, if you guys are Series A or Series B fundraising, what you need to do then is to show, I've done all these experiments, I found these 4 or 5 over the last 2 years that work really well. Now give me 10 million, 15 million, whatever it is, so I can put more fuel onto the fire and really hypergrow, right? That's what the larger rounds are really for, is to really put more money into these things that work. But the first couple of years, you got to figure out what works, right? There's no way to know unless you go out there and run experiments.
Okay, so we've got traction, sandwich, one-liner through Mad Libs, lose your Tom-Sum slide and instead replace with GTM. Run experiments.
Exactly.
Anything else?
I think that's a lot of homework for everybody in the audience.
Okay.
Was you add anything else?
I want to add one, maybe, and I want you to challenge whether that satisfies rank number 5. I had when I was raising my first round, I approached some. I think there was a conference in Vilnius. Login. I approached I had a speed dating with a dozen or so investors. Pretty much all of them said your startup is shit, idea is shit, and I took it at heart. I went back totally devastated. One thing I did was I went to do fundraising with those shitty slides that I can't look at, but also with, I think, maybe a month or 2 in my runway left. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but when I remember at 500 Startups, the fundamentals that we learned were actually fundraising is a learned skill. It's not a talent.
Right.
And the way to reduce that anxiety and stress associated with pulling you out of the business and having you to wear 2 hats, both fundraising as well as running the business and growing it, is just running it as a sales process. Think of it as landing your customers in a sustainable way, one after another. You have a funnel. You don't treat your investor conversations as something special, but actually, most likely it's going to be a no. But the more conversations you have, the more you are fine at, yeah, you're not for me, that's fine. And in fact, one of the very practical things was do 4 weeks of prep.
Yep.
Don't do calls with investors then, and then do 4 weeks of actual calls or meetings with investors. And on top of that, rank those, organize those investor calls week by week. Shitty angels first week, good angels second week, shitty VCs third week, and good VCs fourth week.
Yeah.
Remember that? Sorry? There are no shitty angels. Do you agree, Suhas?
Well, more or less. I'll tell you one thing, though. I think you captured the essence of fundraising, which is it's all about momentum, right? Momentum. That's probably the biggest takeaway that everybody in the audience should have on the fundraising process. You have to have momentum. Don't drag this out for 6 months, 9 months. Keep it to a 2 to 3 month process maximum with at least a month or so of preparation, right? That's why you're going after the angels than the VCs, right? There's a momentum, there's a process for this.
What do you do with your investor calls you and says, hey, I'm interested, let's meet, and they say, wow, this is amazing. Let's take this forward conversation. What do? You just you run a fundraising process, or you hope for that term sheet?
I mean, ideally, what I would do is essentially you want to gather as many angel checks as you can early on, and then you approach the bigger VCs and say, look, I've got a third of my round already subscribed from all these angels. Can you please fill out the round, lead it, and we'll be done quickly, right? I already have this much momentum. And you simply are looking for a hole to fill in where already a third of it is filled with angels or other quick checks, right? And I really do like angels because they're much faster and much quicker at writing these checks. It's not as large, but it's at least something, right? To at least get you initial momentum. That's the most important part of the fundraising process.
Okay, good. So does that deserve a number 5 place in the tips?
Let's put it on there, yeah.
Okay, good.
Let's put it
let's switch gears. Pitch deck teardown. Every time I meet a startup, what I try to do is send them Suhas way, have Suhas in 15 minutes tear down their deck, tear down their pitch, and even reverse pitch back to the founder. You love doing this. You are fantastic at it. You even have this process where you take a deck, redline it, send it back to the founder with specific things, specific copy, specific element, and why you actually need to make those changes. Tell me your thought process, what goes through your mind when you are reading a deck or listening to a pitch, as well as what are those top 3 things that you see need to be fixed beyond those 5 practical.
You know, I think it's a bit of an illness. I've been doing this for a few years, and people would send me their decks, and without even asking, I would just redline it and just send it back to them and say, look, just fix this, and then let's talk. I can't look at this. So this is just something that I think you and I both realize this needs to be out in the market, productized. So maybe we can announce it here. Is a new service that we're calling BADideas, right? BADideas.fund. And you can go online, you can sign up, and I think there's even a promo code for all the attendees here called TechChill, which is half off of the prices there. But we'll basically redline the deck, we'll do a proper storyline, and we'll even design it nicely for you, right? But we'll emphasize the storyline. So it's something that we think is really needed in the market to help fix these really bad decks, because honestly, most of the decks we get are quite bad, but they're fixable. Right? Number 1 is getting the storyline right. Traction sandwich, right, as I mentioned earlier, I think is crucial to keeping interest of the investor. And then getting the right kind of distribution strategy in the deck from the get-go. I think that's probably the biggest takeaways you can get from this sort of a service with bad decks.
I'm so excited about this.
Yeah.
I always feel bad about taking advantage of your time, ask how much I can ask, how much founders can ask from your time, but this is so awesome that you and we are productizing this so that more founders can get benefit from your teardown skills. And one thing I wanted to emphasize is we've seen many of these sleek and really nice and beautiful slides. I suppose, well, one of the secrets that many maybe don't realize, and I wonder whether you agree, that a good slide or a really nicely designed slide is not the goal. what is the goal? What do you need in it? What does a good deck mean or pitch mean?
Yeah, if I had an hour to fix the decks, I would not really focus on making the icons really pretty or the colors stand out. I would really focus on the storyline. I think this is the word I've said at least 20 times now, but the storyline is just so crucial for a deck of how you tell the story and get the investor excited. So think of it almost like a graph, like get them really excited with the traction up front, show them the usual things you show in a sandwich, and then end with more traction, right? So just talk about that, and more specifically, talk about the experiments you're going to run over the next 18 months with the money you'll get from investors. Show them what milestones they'll achieve in the next 18 months, be it customers, countries expanded to, et cetera. And then just finally, show them that you are the team to do this. You're going to be one of the 3 out of 10 that's going to hit unicorn status, right, from the investor's mindset.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Suhas, where can people find you?
Probably the easiest way is LinkedIn. LinkedIn me, I'll send you the discount code, which is TechChill for BADideas.fund, and also give you the GPT as well for your one-liner.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the audience.
Thank you.